Today I have something really special for you. Basically, the whole studio is centered around this very special piece. This is the SSL X desk. When we renovated the studio about 2-3 years ago, I was shopping for a new centerpiece for the whole studio. And as you know, I'm a big fan of outboard gear, so I wanted to have something that allowed me to integrate each one of the EQs and compressors that I have in the racks without having to recall digital patch bays and all of that. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the RME Total Mix, and I use that quite extensively for the presets, so I can easily recall stuff. But to be honest, I still very much like the analog signal flow when it comes down to studio production. Of course, as you know, we don't have huge bands recording in here, so I didn't really have the need to place a huge desk. I had an old Soundcraft, still made in England, with just huge power supply back in the days, and I sold that for quite cheap because honestly, it wouldn't fit my flow anymore. So I just wanted something, a desk that would allow me to have balanced inter-channel returns, quite a lot of summing possibilities, and on top of it, the monitoring control that would allow me to basically make sure I hear everything as transparent as I possibly can. The circuit into this desk is the very same you'll find in the new AWS SSL or the SSL Delta, so all the big large format SSL desks that have been produced nowadays. So it's extremely transparent, tons of headroom, and the only thing that's missing is probably what most people would buy an SSL for, which is the preamps, the EQ, and the dynamics. So there's none of that, but there's all of the rest. There's a huge amount of routing possibilities onto this small boy, and all of it to the highest extent. So meaning it's, again, absolutely transparent. No matter how hard you hit it, it's very, very difficult to distort onto this desk. The way I use it, when it comes down to record, I normally write faders to Pro Tools. So this will basically be hooked up with all of my mic pre's, and let's say I use my 1073s on channel 1 and 2. That's fantastic. I can hook up the output of those via the patch bay, the Bantam patch bays that we have over there, into the actual line inputs of this guy before we hit Pro Tools. I can then, let's say, line trim if necessary, but most likely I will insert some compressors and EQ on the way in, so balance inter-channel returns. And then I can decide if I want, again, run the faders, so the levels to Pro Tools, which is what I normally do, or just, let the desk do its thing. Which basically means no matter how hard I write the faders, this is just for monitoring purposes, while the direct out that will be sent to Pro Tools, it's based on what's in here, so on the line levels prior to the faders themselves. So this button here will flip the operations between pre or post fader for the direct outs. The other thing that you have, again, is a line trim, analog line trim, so in case we're hitting it too hard out of the preamp, we can definitely trim it down or trim it up if we need extra help. The top button you'll find in here says Alt, which stands for alternative. What that means is that I can audition or patch in the alternative input of the desk, because each one of these channel strips has a main input and an alternative input. In this position, I, for instance, flip in between the Firephase 802 and the Symphony Hypogee that I have in my setup, so I can even quickly compare those. The other thing you'll find is, of course, a polarity reverse, inserts on each channel, balance inserts, so send and returns. The channel operation for the direct out, as I told you, can be pre or post fader. And then we have, for the talents, a Q send. It's a stereo Q send, so we can send level of the main channels to the Qs. We can even solo those, and that gets sent to our artists. On top of that, we can decide if whatever we're sending to them is, again, pre or post fader. So we could have, let's say, our main mix with this very high, but let's say the drummer doesn't want to have so much bass in it. Well, we can just put it, pre-fader, and then we decide how much of the bass it gets sent to that drummer. So very, very flexible. The other button that you see here, it's very crowded, I know, but that's the beauty of this desk, says again Alt, which stands for alternative. What that allows me to do on mixdown is to bring the Symphony DAs into the mix bus. So I have 8 main channels on mixdown, and if I flip these guys to the alternative position as they are. I have the ability to pan them, so if I have all the stereo stems, I'll probably do that. And this will go to the main Q bus, which I can solo anytime. I have a trim on it as well. And then with the push of a button, I bring in the Q bus to mix. So now I have 8 channels plus 8, which makes 16 on mix down, which for such a small desk, it's incredible. You know, you can sum 16 channels with discrete pen pots and levels with the flip of a button and insert center returns on the main 8, which is great. The other thing you'll find, 2 mono effect sends, FX1, FX2, with their own bussing here, which we can, as always, solo, raise up the level or dim it down. Again, solo, AFL, after fader listening. We can have it pre or post fader. Again, a lot of flexibility. And these might be sent, let's say, to time-based effects, or you can even use it for squashing something. Then you can return that stuff either onto any of the main channels or the alternative channels through the Q to mix bus, or, as since we have it, 2 additional stereo return channels. So these guys, again, are 2 times 2 channels that might be returned onto the mix bus itself. And if you want, you can also send it to your artists. So the idea is that we can use this on mix down to expand the capabilities of summing of this device, but we can also easily, send the time-based effects to the cues and make sure that our main singer doesn't get super shy when he doesn't hear his voice going through an effect. So this is basically replicated through the first 8 channels. Again, main, alternatives on the cues, and the cues can come to the mix bus. What's unique about this desk, it offers also control room facilities. So when it comes down to monitor, you can even use what's built into this area of the desk to flip between the main speaker or the second speakers to check what's the mono compatibility of your mix. You can plug in, a lot of times we have guests in the studios like, check out this song, and they just want to plug in their iPhone or whatever. That's what they did. SSL was pretty smart. I mean, it's a mini jack input, which we can audition just by flipping it. And, with this button, we can even sum the mix with the iJack, or we also have an external input. The external input is what I normally listen to when I'm recording a mix, a finished mix. So I'm mixing it down and recording it back to Pro Tools, and I want to make sure I'm actually listening to the recorded material. So the finished mix recorded on tape. So that's the only way, because otherwise if I would be monitoring the mix, I would basically be hearing what I'm sending to Pro Tools, but not what actually gets recorded. So this gives me, the capability of auditioning pre and post AD, so to speak. The other thing that it also has is a built-in talkback, which gets hooked up to the Q-Send, so you can talk to your musicians and this stuff gets sent to your Q-Send. And you can change the status of this talkback. Now I have it on latching, or I can have it as momentary, that when I let it go, it just will disable the talkback. And as you see, whenever I press this, the microphone that's here gets activated and has its own volume. And the main speakers get dimmed down. Just to wrap it all up, we also have headphones amplifiers here, so we can monitor either the main mix or what we're sending to the musicians with Q to headphone mix. And we have our mix bus, because there's also a mix bus, of course, in here. Even though you don't see that large peak fader you find on the SSL, you still have a mix fader through the use of a knob, which has a detented position to tell you that's the 0 position. What I really like about this is that in such a small block, you have your main fader, but you also have an insert center return. So let's say you're mixing your main projects and you also want to kind of limit it a bit and give it some extra sparkle with the Pultec EQ, for instance. Well, you also have an insert center return on the mix bus, which is extremely, extremely useful. The other thing you can also do is you can even parallel, so blend in what gets returned into the insert return. So giving you even the capability of bringing in just a little bit of the distorted or compressed or EQ'd signal of the mix bus and not going 100% fully wet, which is great. The other thing that's really unique about this desk, given its size, is the fact that you can mix down up to not 8 channels as you might see at first sight, but up to 8 plus 8, 16, 2 stereo returns, 20. And with this, you can even mix down up to 22 line level signals in such a small footprint. Now you might ask yourself, how the hell do you connect all of this gear on the back of the unit if it's so small? Well, that's what SSL did for us, just by the implementation of the B25 connections on the back. But once you have this and at least one patch bay, you can hook up all of your gear. I have all of my compressors and EQs, easy to be engaged just with the flip of a button. I have all of my time-based effects hooked up to the FX Send 1 and 2. I have my headphone mix amplifier hooked up to the Q stereo send. So in here, I do 99% of my job when it comes down to routing and making selections of different kinds of gear. All in all, I don't see myself changing this anytime soon. And if I want to expand, I can even integrate it with an SSL X-Rec or an Xpander, which I know unfortunately now is not on the market anymore, but I'm still looking for one. So to wrap it all up, I use this guy to record, to mix, to monitor, and even to master signals. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know you didn't hear any music or any sound through the episode besides my voice, but the idea was to really showcase this piece, which is pretty much the hub of the entire studio. Thumbs up to SSL, and I hope to see you soon.